Thanks for tuning in to the Women's Vibrancy Code, a podcast dedicated to helping women move from exhausted to energized, balance their hormones, and feeling turned on by their life, their lover, and themselves. I'm your host, Maraya Brown. I'm a Yale and functional medicine trained women's health expert, midwife, mom, keynote speaker, and self-made entrepreneur. I'm the founder of my signature program, the Women's Vibrancy Code. So sit back, relax, and let's chat about your energy, hormones, libido, and embracing your feminine power. Oh, and you might want to have pen and paper to take some notes on some of these episodes. Okay, so leaky gut. First, let me talk about symptoms of leaky gut because they're really broad. Often we don't necessarily think of it. So poor immune system. So if you've ever been diagnosed with autoimmune condition, if you tend to get sick easily, I think of leaky gut. Bloating, diarrhea, constipation, gas, headaches, brain fog, memory loss. This can all be coming from leaky gut. Fatigue, abdominal weight increase or abdominal bloating, metabolic syndrome. So increased circumference around the abdomen. Any like minor blood sugar dysregulation signs where maybe like you've gone in and your blood sugars are slightly elevated. Skin rashes, acne, eczema, rosacea, those can all link back to leaky gut. What else? Cravings for sugar, right? If the cravings are big and intense for sugar or carbs, joint pain, arthritis, aches and pains in the body, that we can definitely think leaky gut. Yeast overgrowth, if you have recurrent yeast infections, but also if you've been diagnosed with candida or just yeast overgrowth. Digestive symptoms other than what I've already described, heartburn, if you've ever been prescribed, like a Prilosec or something like that, which actually wreaks havoc on our gut, which is a totally different conversation. Migraines, hives, anxiety, depression, water retention, puffiness. Even if you've been diagnosed with estrogen dominance, I want you to think leaky gut, or that your body doesn't detoxify well. So obviously it's really broad. And so it's something that I think all of us, it's important for us to consider. If you've ever been on antibiotics, if you've ever taken ibuprofen, if you've ever been on the birth control pill, we have to consider the possibility of leaky gut. How do we test it? Why is it bad? That's a little bit more difficult. Okay. A GI map is going to be the best test to look at your stool and your gut microbiome and to see if there's yeast overgrowth or parasites or, certain bacteria that are out of whack. But to really measure leaky gut isn't necessarily a thing that I know of. But we do know that the gut is just an amazing organ. And it's obviously divided into different zones. And I want you to know that there is more bacteria in the gut than stars in the Milky Way. We're talking trillions versus billions. We as humans are more our microbiome than we are human cells. We're like 90% microbiome, 10% human cells. So when we talk about your gut biosis, it is a big conversation. So remember, we first put food into our mouth. We're masticating, we're chewing, that's stimulating digestive enzymes, and the digestion process starts in the mouth. So for some individuals, actually looking at oral biosis to look at our microbiome in our mouth can be a real thing. So if you're someone who has a lot of dental stuff, like Heidi, we had a correspondence on one of the group calls, and I suggested actually getting an oral probiotic. There is such a thing. So it literally starts there. Then in our stomach, we want our stomach to be an acidic environment. And so for some individuals, they're just not simply breaking down food like we would ideally want your body to because the stomach's not acidic enough. Maybe your body's not producing bile. Maybe your liver is feeling kind of sluggish. Maybe you've been using antacids and Tums and Tagamet or Prilosec or any of those things. And so for some women, you can look up the HCl challenge. So the HCl challenge look it up. There's a whole protocol, but you can take a supplement of HCl before a meal, and you'll up the dose each meal until you feel that kind of acidity in your stomach. And then from that point forward, drop down a dose to help your body better digest. In some scenarios, adding digestive enzymes before a meal can really make a difference to just simply up level how the body starts that digestion and breakdown in the stomach. And then as food leaves the stomach, it actually becomes more alkaline, and utilizing bile from the gallbladder as well as the liver. So leaky gut happens in the small bowel and the colon. And I want you to keep in mind that our intestines are only one cell layer thick. Okay, it's a very permeable membrane. Okay, this is where we are actually absorbing the nutrients from the food that we're eating. This is where our immune system, 70% of our immune system exists here in our gut. 90% of our serotonin production exists in the gut. And so if you imagine cheesecloth or like a very permeable membrane, it's one cell layer thick. And so skin, as an example, is 3 layers deep. So if you just think about your skin, it actually has 3 layers. And think about how easily we can cut through it and bleed. When we're talking about our intestines, it's one cell layer thick. And so what happens with leaky gut is it literally, if you imagine that cheesecloth, rather than the semi-permeable little tiny pukas or holes, with leaky gut, the holes become large. There's been an onslaught that has degraded the integrity of that semi-permeable membrane. And now partially digested enzymes and yeast and bacteria and proteins are able to sneak through. So the body's losing its ability to really absorb appropriately, and the wrong stuff is getting through. Some of that stuff actually crosses over the blood-brain barrier, which is why when I give the whole laundry list of brain fog and fatigue and even dementia can sometimes be coming in from leaky gut. Okay, so there is some genetic predisposition here, right? For some of us, we have a genetic predisposition towards diabetes or metabolic syndrome, or specifically carrying weight around the abdomen, central obesity. And so I think it's important to call out that can be a factor. And our genes are what load the gun. It's our lifestyle that pulls the trigger. Okay, so when it comes to leaky gut, it really is something that is caused by lifestyle, some of it out of our control, just based on the air we breathe, the water we drink, the things that we've been exposed to in our lifetime. But a lot of it really can shift based on our choices. So as we start healing that gut lining, we're actually reducing inflammation. And so reduction in inflammation is the focus. And remember, as we reduce inflammation, now we're allowing the adrenals to function at their maximal capacity. We're turning on the ovarian function to turn on hormone production. We're helping the liver function at its maximal capacity. It's all related. So it's not like we're only looking at the gut through a silo, but just keep in mind that everything that you're doing for reduction of stress, reduction of inflammation is relevant and important in the context of this conversation. So specifically overuse of antibiotics, they're just simply overprescribed. I think, a lot of providers that I talk to, they say, these are the words that I hear coming out of their mouth. The patient comes to me and they want my solution. If I don't give them a prescription, they're going to leave and they're going to go somewhere else, or the patient is unhappy. And so it is kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy, where there are plenty of scenarios where your provider really might not want to be prescribing the antibiotic, particularly if you're ill and it's viral in nature. Antibiotic's not going to touch it. But instead, the antibiotic goes in and kills all the normal, natural, healthy microbiome. So I've heard statistics as high as like 95% of the time that we're ill, it's actually viral in nature. Now, there are certain times where antibiotics go in and they are needed, and they're laser sharp and they do a good job at what they need to do. But how often are we looking for a quick fix? We're working too hard. We can't risk the extra 24 to 48 hours. So we take one for the team and go, just give me the prescription just in case it's going to help. Not remembering that every time you take an antibiotic, you have now created 6 months of recovery of your gut microbiome. So yes, maybe it did speed things up to help you heal that extra 24 or 48 hours faster. To what end? And so to really be in that place of discernment, do I really need these antibiotics at this point? And to keep in mind, like, add up all the antibiotics you've been on over the last 5 years and go, wow, okay, 6 months for each round for my gut microbiome to recover. And some of them are layered on top of one another. And so a lot of what Katie talks about from, the role of, she did one of the recorded calls, you can go listen to it, on the different layers of the gut and how each layer of the gut from a functional perspective is impacting your well-being, and how to care for each of those kind of functional layers. Not like when I talk about cell layers, that's different. So antibiotics, ibuprofen is another one. Ibuprofen wreaks havoc on the gut lining. If you've ever been on hormonal contraception, we're now learning that for some reason, exogenous hormones really wreak havoc on our gut lining. I'm curious around antidepressants because most antidepressants are targeting directly the serotonin production. And we know that 90% of serotonin production is coming from the gut lining. So what is that doing to interject or disrupt the normal feedback loop of our body when that's where the production comes from? I'm just curious, and I don't have answers to that. I don't know. Think about yeast and sugar. Okay, for each of you that has sugar cravings, often those cravings are coming from a body's desire for different nutrients, but also it's coming from a likelihood of yeast overgrowth. And so it really has to be cut cold turkey. And the sugar is also wreaking havoc on that gut lining. So the things that, your antibiotics, your ibuprofen, your birth control, your sugar, pesticide-filled food. Okay, remember that most pesticides or herbicides, the way that they work is they're trying to keep the bugs off of the produce, right? The farmers want to grow these beautiful, productive crops. And by putting the herbicide or pesticide on, it attacks the gut lining of these bugs. And then if there's any of that residue on the plant or in the plant, now we're consuming it. And so now we're literally attacking our own gut lining, not to mention the genetic modification that's happening. Many say that our body no longer even identifies some of these things as food. Caffeine is another one. So caffeine is highly acidic, and it's going to speed things up and reduce the absorption of the nutrients from what you're eating. I want to say out loud, it's really important that we're having regular bowel movements. So at a minimum, just look at your bowels. If you go back and look at the gut module, the Bristol stool chart, pull up the Bristol stool chart and actually look at what stage and look at the quality of your bowel movements. Are they kind of like soft banana in consistency, a nice brown color, not too dark, not too light, right? Not smoothie poop, not pellet poop, not cracked poop. And that also is going to say a lot about the quality of how your body is digesting. But keep in mind that when it goes from the stomach down into the intestines, that's where the majority of the absorption of nutrients is happening. That's kind of the area I'm talking about. As it progresses down closer to the anus, that's when it's actually becomes stool. And there's one more round of the body reabsorbing water and reabsorbing nutrients, and it actually becomes stool. And so in some scenarios, the stool is coming down and close to the anus, and maybe sometimes we're too stressed, we're too busy, we're not listening to our body, and we're not paying attention to the fact that we need to poop. And so now the body's continuing to take the water to reabsorb the water, and so the poop becomes more hard and constipated. And so just keep in mind that there's all different things going on in the quality of poop, but still Bristol stool chart is worth taking a peek at. Parasites, if you've ever been diagnosed with SIBO, H. pylori, if your detoxification is slow, estrogen dominance, all of that, we want to go, all right, what's going on with leaky gut? And if you're ever wanting to get a test done, once again, to look quantifiably, the GI map is going to be the best option. And Katie is phenomenal at reading the GI map, much better than I am. She and I are in constant collaboration and conversation, but definitely worth it. So yes, testing can be beneficial, but I think it's also important that we acknowledge that there's lots of factors. We also get to look at your stress level. We also get to look at your overall inflammation. We get to look at what are the symptoms for you specifically in your body, and not see you as just a quantifiable test. and stress being the big one. Not just what is the stress level in your body, but how are you handling the stress? Because under high stress, women end up with what's called vagus nerve dysfunction. And in vagus nerve dysfunction, the stomach stops secreting acid or digestive enzymes. And so now we are not able to properly digest the proteins. The gut barrier integrity gets compromised. Often constipation shows up because of the stress itself. And so some little fun things to do for vagus nerve is singing like an opera singer actually stimulates the vagus nerve. So next time you're in the shower or driving, just pretend you're like the most famous opera singer. It is one of the ways to actually stimulate vagus nerve. And there's a lot of research, all different ways that I'm hearing different experts now talk about vagus nerve health, but specifically in the leaky gut conversation and activating the stomach acid production, digestive enzymes, and actually going in and addressing foundational leaky gut, we want to stimulate that vagus nerve. So singing like an opera singer. The other one is gargling. So if you gargle with digestive bitters until there's a tear in your eye, once you've gargled until the tear shows up, that shows that the vagus nerve has actually been stimulated. And it means that the brain pathway above the vagus nerve has actually been lit up. And they say that it takes at least a minute. So gargle with your bitters and obviously breath work. You know, one of the reasons, even with the call that we, was the earlier part of this call, that was an intense conversation, right? We get to go back to our breath. We get to go back to feeling into our bodies and allowing ourselves to feel safe. So we want to eat lots of high fiber foods. You hear me talk about the role of fruits, vegetables, and berries, especially if they're organic. That's always going to go in and serve your gut. Okay, whether it's leaky gut or not, the more fiber, the better. One of the reasons why I advocate for everyone to add in the ground flax. Also, quality omegas are going to make a big difference to lubricate that gut lining. Your coconut oil, your nuts, your seeds, your sprouts, your MCT oil, your avocado oil, your olive oil, all of that is going to go in and really, I think of as like a soothing coating on that gut lining. One thing that I found very interesting as I was kind of doing a deep dive into leaky gut is that a concussion can then show up as leaky gut. So somehow the brain chemistry of a concussion will then increase the chance of someone developing leaky gut, which I think is fascinating. So just to call out that we live in a day and age where our sympathetic nervous systems are on overload. How ironic that even just in the last call, the need to be constantly multitasking and the defensiveness that some might show up with if they're asked to focus on one thing, because we all have so many things that we're juggling. But can we allow some desensitization in our bodies because we're so accustomed to being overcharged, and address where is that overcharge coming from? And is it really the end of the world if I set some boundaries here and actually just go, it's just an hour? Like none of this is life or death here, right? Can I set some boundaries? And can I allow some space to get into my sympathetic nervous system to allow my body to feel safe? Because remember, in fight, flight, or freeze, also known as parasympathetic, the body goes into stress response. That's survival. Blood flow goes to the extremities. It's ready to fight. It's ready to run fast. Digestion shuts off. If you're running from a tiger, it does not matter that you just had a beautiful salad and an organic vegan hamburger, grass-fed from the Bahamas. It doesn't matter. Your body will stop digesting it because digestion is not a valuable thing in the context of I have to fight hard and run fast, okay? So the more that we can acknowledge how much time we're spending on our phone, how many ways we're multitasking, okay, each time you pivot topics, it takes the brain 20 minutes to refocus. So we think that we're so proud of ourselves for being productive and doing all these things all at once. But I ask you the question, is it actually that you're doing all these things at all once and nothing's really being done well, versus just like honing in on, I'm going to focus on this one thing. And then I'm going to close that and I'm going to move to the next thing. I'm going to focus on that. I'm seeing people in the chat. I'm going to get to the chat after. Let me get through this. So diaphragmatic breathing, right? Allowing the slow inhalation, the hold, and allowing your exhalation to be longer than the inhalation. That alone pushes your body into, I shouldn't say push, relaxes into parasympathetic. The body goes, oh, I'm safe. I talk about Shinrin yoku, forest bathing, walking in the forest, leaving your phone behind, barefoot walking. Can you get out in the grass and take your socks and shoes off and actually feel the earth on your feet so that we can conserve our energy and actually slow down the heart rate, increase intestinal and activity, actually relax those sphincters in the gastrointestinal tract. And sometimes also stopping the obsession around what to eat and what not to eat. Like one of the reasons you don't ever hear me talk about calorie counting and big into food planning. And I think it can get kind of obsessive, but can we find a lifestyle for stress management and a lifestyle of this is how I eat and this is what I eat that really serves me. So going specifically into some supplements that can be really lovely for gut health and leaky gut specifically, quercetin is one. That it's in a high quantity if you happen to like to eat capers. Capers are a great source of quercetin, but you can also get it in supplemental form. Marshmallow root is another one. It protects and soothes the gut lining. L-glutamine, aloe vera. Aloe vera is known to be very soothing to the gut. Licorice root. I already mentioned your quality omegas like coconut oil. Slippery elm. Slippery elm, you'll see it in lozenges and throat lozenges. It's coating. I have some women that will make like a slippery elm vaginal lubrication. It's like super gelatinous and slippery. It's very soothing to the gut lining. Various mushrooms can be very helpful, and it's counterintuitive. So some people say, oh no, I was told I can't have mushrooms because they're yeast. But many mushrooms are actually medicinal, and many of the adaptogens come from the mushroom family. And so I brought out Gut Connect 365. This is one of my favorites. It was designed by Dr. Vincent Pedre. He's a functional medicine doc out of New York that specializes in gut health. And this is specifically for leaky gut. And it's kind of like one place where it's L-glutamine, quercetin, slippery elm, marshmallow root, licorice root, aloe vera, maitake mushroom, zinc oronate. It's like one stop shop. And what I'll do is it has this scooper. My favorite is the vanilla cinnamon flavor. So you've got this scoop. I generally will do like 1/8 of a scoop and I just add it into my water. It tastes really yummy. I'll add it into my adaptogen elixir. I do find it's quite powerful. For some women, they might have detox symptoms. And if I stop using it for a while and I restart, I definitely feel it's potent. And so start with a small amount. I've worked with women who have pretty like almost debilitating ulcerative colitis, that this has made a huge difference with their gut well-being. And kids can have it, adults can have it. I give it to my children. Chia seeds is another one. To add chia seeds into your water is another source of omegas. MCT oil, I already mentioned. And then if you end up doing a GI map and you do a deep dive specifically with Katie, she's going to be able to give you some personalized approach. But as some just examples, if there's yeast or parasite overgrowth, and remember, if there's leaky gut, now they're able to sneak through more easily because there's more holes in that semi-permeable membrane. So berberine is one that helps kill the bad bacteria. Oregano and clove oil is great for killing yeast. Wormwood and black walnut is great for killing off parasites. And I'm not giving any specific protocol. I encourage you to do some homework, come to your one-on-one time and really ask Katie, especially if you do a GI map and you want to play around with any of these, making sure that you're filtering your water well. And once again, the ewg.org, looking at your specific zip code and finding what contaminants are high in the zip code that you live. Obviously cleansing the mind, being aware of negativity that's coming in and switching it over to gratitude. There's the acronym CARE, C-A-R-E. So C stands for cleanse, take away the inflammatory foods. If there's parasites, get rid of them, get rid of your genetically modified foods. One article that I read says that US farmers are growing with 6 times more parasites today than historically, because the genetically modified food has been so genetically modified. They now have to use more pesticides to combat the way that the plants are evolving from the genetic modification. It's so fascinating. Obviously, for many of you, I recommend taking out gluten and dairy and caffeine. For some, for adding in more probiotic rich foods like your sauerkraut, your kefir, your kombucha, your dairy-free yogurts, all of that is going to add to the microbiome. And if you've had a GI map, it's good to see, well, maybe there's one bacteria that's actually in a space of overgrowth. And so occasionally it's a scenario where adding more probiotic rich foods might not actually be what you need. If you're not going to do a GI map test, I think starting with more probiotic rich foods is always good. And prebiotics almost trump probiotics. So prebiotics go in and help the good bacteria do a better job at what they're supposed to be doing. So your garlic, your onion, your Jerusalem artichoke, a lot of the gas producing foods, your beans. Okay. So C is cleanse. A is activate. So reactivating the digestive system with the right nutrients, right? Reducing your inflammation, eating a diet rich in all the colors, adding in your greens, addressing the imbalances between the good and bad bacteria with lots of prebiotic rich foods. And for some, trying digestive enzymes before a meal. So before a meal, drink a tall glass of water, try to hydrate less during the meal, but instead before, and try adding digestive enzymes or trying the HCl challenge for those that want to look into that. Other ways to activate would be omegas, aloe, ginger, turmeric. So CARE, C-A-R is restore. So restoring the gut microbiome. And that's once again, deep into the probiotic and prebiotic conversation. Adding supplemental, if you're not vegan, colostrum. Colostrum is great to go in and help restore that gut lining. A wide variety of vegetables that are fiber rich, every color, every day. Okay, from a functional medicine perspective, what they're saying is at least 9 different vegetables each day. And most Western societies are pretty much void of fiber. Dr. Vincent Pedre says we need a minimum of 20 grams or more a day of fiber. And that's going to help heal the gut. It's going to help restore digestion, elimination. There's so much there that is going to help in the fiber conversation. And then with CARE, E stands for enhance. So use nutrients we know heal healthy lining of the gut, like L-glutamine, licorice, aloe, quercetin, okay? And so Gut Connect 365 for me is just the most simple way, and it tastes yummy. It's not cheap. I think a bottle like this costs around $65, but it's potent. And so if you try it for 3 months and just take note of your aches and pains, your brain fog, your mood, your sleep, your digestion, and just track and see what changes. Any rashes, any stuff that's showing up for you or your children, I think it's worth taking a peek at. Okay, y'all are awesome. Thank you so much for today. It was powerful, it was important, and it was churning. Ciao, ciao.